Hello and welcome to the big picture. Is it now the turn of University Grants Commission after the Planning Commission? A report of the committee set up by the HRD Ministry after NDA came to power has recommended the scrapping of the University Grants Commission. The committee, headed ironically by a former chairman of the UGC, Hari Gautam, has concluded that the commission has failed to fulfill its mandate and any attempt to reshape or restructure it will be futile. The UGC was formed through an Act of Parliament in 1956 and its mandate is to provide funds to universities apart from maintaining standards in institutions of higher education. 44 central universities, 326 state universities, 130 deemed universities and 205 private universities come under the UGC. Now that the committee has suggested scrapping of the UGC and to set up a new National Higher Education Authority in its place, we will discuss today whether this recommendation should be accepted and if not, why not. To discuss this, I have with me B.B. Bhattacharya, former Vice Chancellor of the Jawaharlal Nehru University, Syed Hasnaian, former Vice Chancellor of Hyderabad University and also a former member of the UGC, M.M. Ansari, present member of the University Grants Commission, Nandita Narain, President, Delhi University Teachers Association, and Urmi Goswami, Special Correspondent, Economic Times. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Bhattacharya, you think this was something which was coming, considering that, in the last several years, there have been a lot of discussions about the way the UGC has been functioning. So this was something which was coming?
Well, I do not know the exact form in which finally the bill will be placed in the parliament, because what we read only in the newspaper today.
No, it's a two-volume report, okay. And a draft of the bill has also been prepared, apparently.
But one thing some of us who have been involved in education for quite some time was feeling, UGC is not functioning the way it was meant to be. UGC was to help in education, facilitating teaching, research, fund requirements. Instead, it degenerated into a super bureaucracy organization. Because even as a Vice Chancellor, we used to feel often that UGC was, narrowing its own functioning to a kind of a bureaucratic setup. Whereas Kothari Commission, long ago, when they talked about the role of the UGC, facilitator. Facilitation means you maintain quality, you ensure broadening of the education base, and as an intermediary between universities and colleges on the one hand and the ministry. Unfortunately, last few years, quite some time, UGC somehow has not been able to do that. This issue came in the UPA government also. So they came at that time slightly bigger and broader umbrella called National Commission for Higher Education Research. Again, the same issue was raised. UGC is not able to look after the education properly. So you need a broader umbrella with a more power and so on. Now, this new National Higher Education Authority, I don't know what will be its mandate. NCHR wanted to integrate research with teaching. UGC currently is engaged mainly with teaching. Research
UGC is engaged mainly with teaching. The report says that UGC has virtually ended up as a funding institution.
And that's what I meant. And that too, instead of being a facilitator between ministry and educational institutions, it became an intermediate bureaucracy with its own draconian rules, regulation, and then 200 points. I used to have a great difficulty. 200 points here, 300 points there. So the spirit of the whole thing was lost in all these
in the bureaucracies.
Yes.
Ansari, you are sitting there right now. Would you agree with what Professor Bhattacharya says?
Well, I entirely agree with him, but the only thing that I would say that the problem that we have begun to see in the functioning of UGC is not new one. I have been working in the area of higher education for the last 2 decades, and I have been listening of all the problems relating to the UGC, its internal functioning and its role insofar as influencing the quality of higher education and also funding of the universities. So this is not something which is very new to me. And while for the last 3 years,
What is not new to you? These complaints?
No, the complaints that the UGC had not been fulfilling its mandate. For example, we say that the university, UGC had been funding the entire university system. It is funding only 1/3 of institutions, and largely the central universities and the planned grants for the state universities. And now, for the 44 central universities that you have indicated, only about 20 of them are operational. Most of them are non-operational. And if you look at the staff members, 35 to 40% staff are not there. So, I mean, it is also relating to the funding. And at the same time, the UGC passes on the funds which it receives from the central government. And the UGC has not been effectively bargaining for the funds from the center. For example, in this budget, there is a substantial reduction in the funding of the UGC. And the UGC has been very quiet. And this is what it reflects on the administrative management of the UGC and the manner in which the government has been also handling, the UGC. For example, I have been raising this issue, and I also raised this before the Hari Gautam committee, that the UGC is the only commission where the members are, appointed in the manner in which also the Gautam committee has also mentioned that they are not on the full-time basis. Whereas they don't have the executive powers. They go
the members?
They just go and attend a meeting of a day once in 3 months or so, and then they come back and they don't know really what goes on in the UGC office. Now, if you talk of the funding, say for example, I will refer to only 2 areas. One is the funding. It provides funding only to the extent of 30%. 30, 34, or 40%, and it doesn't go to all the universities. For example, all the Delhi University affiliated colleges are funded by the UGC, but think of the rest of the colleges. About 8,000 colleges, they hardly get the funding on the same pattern as the Delhi colleges do get. And at the same time, look,
what can UGC do about it?
No, the UGC can evolve a policy. I mean, it has to work as a think tank, and has to reflect on the quality of education. And if you also see the regulation of, the areas about the accreditation, that is also comes under the UGC. UGC again has been failing in these areas. I may go in details in these areas, but as far as the deficiencies of the commission is concerned, it is not very new. It has perpetuated for long. So only recently now we have begun to discuss.
So that means that, Nandita, from what both of them says, it means that actually what the report is saying is true, that the UGC has failed in its mandate to fulfill its mandate, and now it needs to be scrapped and a new organization has to be brought.
You see, first I'd like to say that what the Hari Gautam committee is saying and recommending is not new. This was exactly the UPA policy which is being parroted by the NDA now, and in fact we find a reflection.
Was the UPA thinking of scrapping the UGC?
Absolutely. That is how they brought those 6 bills in Parliament. This has been a drive towards privatization which has had the reflection in the various bills that were placed before Parliament by Mr. Kapil Sibal, and each bill has the ingredients of the other bills. We find now that the NDA is pushing the UPA Common Central Universities Bill of 2013, which also has the same ingredients as several other bills. The key ingredients being public-private partnership, we
don't know what is in this draft bill.
Choice-based credit system, semester system, all these things which are being pushed to bring in foreign institutions, particularly American bodies, and also to bring in the private players. This is coming in through various shapes and forms. And we find today, for example, now we've read in the newspapers, we have to see what is the form of this bill that they're proposing. But my suspicion is it is going to be almost identical to the same bill proposed by Kapil Sibalji, that is NCHAER. And we are extremely concerned about the fact that the agencies which are responsible for the erosion of the autonomy and the functioning of the UGC are now saying, well, the UGC is not functioning, so scrap it. I mean, if the UGC is not functioning, please look inwards and find out who is it who has eroded the autonomy of the UGC, who is the person who appoints the chairperson of the UGC in the most dubious manner, open to all kinds of controversies, who are the people.
No, isn't it ironical that this committee was headed by a former UGC chairman and he is finding all these faults and says scrap it?
Well, I say that these are all eye washers. The agenda is set and then you have a committee which is set up which has to give a particular recommendation. How come the Hari Gautam committee did not call any of the stakeholders. None of the teachers' associations were invited to give their views. I mean, the teachers are considered completely incidental, although it is we who are continuously stakeholders. We stay in the system for 30, 40, 50 years. We are the ones who are imparting that education. Surely we should have been asked. So the DUTA, whom I represent, has already represented to the Parliamentary Standing Committee. Why was this other committee set up? I don't know. There's a Parliamentary Standing Committee which represents the people, I mean, in some sense. And that Standing Committee had heard about this bill, and we had also deposed. And my report is that this committee said that this is a bad idea. We should not approve of this bill. It was stopped in the Rajya Sabha. Now there is an attempt to resurrect it. So I really feel that there are certain set of masters that are dictating terms to whichever government comes into power. And I think that they're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. While I agree that the UGC has not played the leadership role it should have been playing, the buffer between universities in order to protect their autonomy and the state, while I believe that the leadership has been completely impoverished and has led to, this ridiculous situation where a 4-year program involving an extra batch and with no infrastructural commitment was brought in. Even though we highlighted this, we appealed to the UGC to intervene. They didn't bother to intervene at that time. And then after a year, because the political leadership changed and understood that there's a groundswell of opinion against it, they just rolled it back in one meeting. I mean, the whole method of functioning of the UGC, where I believe the secretary used to come with a pre-prepared agenda, minutes, and people just had to sign the dotted line. Members have told us where Yogendra Yadav was hounded out for expressing a different opinion when Ansari Saab was ill-treated and intimidated for having a different opinion. So we have to strengthen the autonomy of the UGC, have full-time members, have membership of stakeholders also.
So scrapping is not the solution?
Not at all.
Okay. Mr. Hasnaian? Mr. Hasnaian, two things. One, as Nandita says, they are trying to throw the baby with the bath water. And second, both Mr. Bhattacharya and Professor Bhattacharya and Professor Ansari feels that, there has been a lot of problems with the UGC, and you have been there as a member of the UGC. Would you agree with them?
I will not agree completely with what Nandita has just mentioned. I don't think it is throwing the baby with the bucket. It is simply trying to re-engineer itself. Every institution needs to re-engineer itself after a course of time. There are two major things that the UG is supposed to be doing. One is, as you rightly pointed out, funding. Other is regulating higher education. Let me give you examples of where the UGC has failed. The question raised that where were they sitting all this while? Why they did not take this decision earlier? The answer is very simple. The UGC, when it was created 59 years ago and today, the complexities have changed, dimensions have changed. Today, as you rightly started off by saying, there are close to 700 plus, close to 800 universities. But coming to the first task of the UGC funding, how many of them are being funded? Ansari Saab pointed out that just about 30%, 35% of the total higher education institutions, including universities, are funded. There are something like 38,000 colleges in the country. Only 8,000 are being funded. I think so. There is a mismatch in funding. Why is a mismatch? You can very well say that money is not coming. But look deeper. The money is there. This time the budget apparently has been reduced by, and I quote apparently, reduced by 15,000 crores. But if you really look at it, it is almost similar to what you spent last year, which means you could not spend your complete budget in the last year. So what will happen if we give you more money?
No, Mr.
I'm not saying
sorry.
that UGC doesn't need more money. UGC needs much more money.
Mr. Hasnaian, sorry to intervene. It's a little confusing. You say that only 30 to 35% of the universities and colleges are being funded by the UGC, and then you say that the funds have not been utilized, and that is why you find the same kind of funding having happened this year also compared to last year. How does it work out? Because I'm a little confused about this. If there is funding available and it is not being used, and still you are saying that only 30 to 35% universities are being funded, I don't understand it.
Precisely. Which means there is some deficiency in the way you are functioning. And of late, as Nandita pointed out, I think there is complete ad hocism going on. The colleges are 38,000 and you are funding just about 8,000 colleges. So money is not a problem. Money is there. We certainly need much more money. And the money being given also is not given. There is no encouragement for quality. These programs of Center of Excellence and potentially with excellence, Ansari Sahib will remember, we pushed it in the commission that why are you now saying that we will not fund those universities which have been declared as the center of excellence? You should fund them more and get more and more universities who have benchmarked as per your excellence.
Okay, sir.
So on one hand you have money, but you're not able to fund.
Okay, sir. Okay, Urmi, is this, as Nandita puts it, is this an attempt by the government to bring what the UPA was trying to bring through the back door, or in another form? Is that the way? Is that the way you look at it?
Well, for me to arrive at the same conclusion, one will have to have much better idea what the NDA is planning to do. But there is one thing that virtually everybody across the system will agree, is that there is a need to rework the UGC, to have a second look. Because as everybody ahead of me, whether it's Professor Bhattacharya or Mr. Ansari or Professor Hasnaian, and to some extent even Nandita agrees at that level, the world has changed a lot since the UGC was set up. Not only have we grown in size, the kind of stakeholders has changed. So we have more private players, we have foreign universities wanting to come in. Now we can sit here and debate whether we should have foreign universities in or not. But this is the way the world is changing. The UGC has not kept up with the times. But more importantly, the UGC has become the handmaiden of whichever government has been in power. So it doesn't matter if it's the UPA or the NDA. The question really is this new setup that they're talking about, is this a handmaiden with a new name, or is it going to be really an institution that is independent, that's capable of actually doing a job, of setting standards, of regulating, of driving higher education in this country to greater heights? And that is where my question really is that where are we going with it? Till now, we haven't seen much evidence of that being the case with any of the governments, and definitely not even with this government. I don't see much evidence of them trying to create, at least in the field of education, a setup that will be independent, that will be able to lay the agenda out for a nation that is supposedly at a watershed moment.
Okay. Professor Bhattacharya? Yes, Nandita.
I'd just like to say one little thing here, that what this independence that we're talking about, of course, we all agree it should not be a handmaiden of the government, but it should be accountable to Parliament. That's very important. We have to read this. My impression is that the earlier
suggestion is that
it was not even accountable to Parliament.
It's a statutory body which has come out through an act of Parliament. It's supposed to be accountable to the Parliament.
It has to be answerable. It's not just that it is created like that. It should be answerable in its functioning.
Yes.
One more thing. And I want to say this here, that from being a handmaiden of the government, at least the government are people who are elected, we can go and shout at them, we can appeal to them, we can take it up with them. It should not be the case that it becomes the handmaiden of the corporate sector, which is mastering these changes all over the world. And these changes are not inevitable. There's resistance going on all across the world. This whole 99% versus 1% movement is precisely about control of education as well.
Well, accountable to the Parliament to the extent.
No, accountability is one thing, but how do you look at Nandita's suspicion that all these things are being done to more and more privatize the education system in this country?
No, I don't smell that kind of thing.
You don't smell a conspiracy there?
No, but on the bigger issue, accountability to the Parliament should be for a broader sense that public fund is not misused. But education policy has to be decided in the educational institutions. Autonomy, think tank ideas. What is unfortunately happening is we have too much political interference in day-to-day affairs of the university. I would like a strong, whatever the name, UGC or whatever new national education body, to protect university and education from day-to-day interference of the political system. Good universities all over the world have autonomy. We don't have that. World of education is changing. Whole world is recognizing. In Britain, Oxford University can straight away tell Margaret Thatcher, all-powerful Prime Minister, we are not under you. And yet, Oxford University gets all the grants from the Britain. We want that kind of system, accountability for our standard Are we doing badly in education? Are our students getting neglected, but not interference in day-to-day policy? What is to be done here? Which course I should be there?
No,
that thing there. So there we should be very careful about.
Okay, Mr. Ansari. You know, if you look at the standards of education in this country, all of us have gone through this, all of us know about this, especially the standards in the state universities. The UGC is expected to, one of its main mandate was to ensure that there's certain standards met. But that seems to have been given a complete go-by. What kind of an organization can ensure that kind of a thing now? And why has it been given a go-by? Is it, as the committee report says, that UGC has become just more of a funding body, it has not bothered to maintain standards?
Well, I will come to the point that you have raised, but very important issue has been raised by Professor Bhattacharya, that is about the university autonomy. I mean, most of the university campuses have been politicized and
Absolutely.
they are used for the political purposes, and
we know how
the appointments
now let us be very frank. Let's be very clear. We know how university vice chancellors are appointed nowadays, especially in state universities.
And if you talk of the political interference in the functioning of the UGC, it is equally high. And I would like to draw your attention to Section 21 of the UGC Act, under which it is a Talibani order issued by the MHRD to the UGC, and the UGC functioning is totally paralyzed. I mean, UGC cannot do anything, and I can cite a dozen of cases where the UGC has used this provision to see that things are done, and that is done in case of funding, in case of giving a special favor to certain states, to certain institutions. So the political interference in the functioning of UGC had been very high. So it is not only the UGC which is required to be re-looked into, but also the way the MHRD has been functioning, and this has been happening in the UK.
So one second, sir. So if the committee report says that when it says that the UGC has failed in its mandate, you are saying that the political...
It is silent on MHRD role.
Not just MHRD, which means the kind of political interference which has caused this kind of a situation in the UGC. That's what you're trying to say?
Yeah, this is what precisely I want to say. I mean, if UGC had not been functioning well, the MHRD is equally responsible.
Would you agree with that, Mr. Hasnaian? Is that what your experience also has been?
I fully agree. I think there are two issues. I can tell you there are two issues, both are very important. The issue of autonomy is equally important. When the Secretary of Education of the US government wanted to visit Harvard University, the Vice President of Harvard did not have time to meet him. This is the standard, that's why Harvard is Harvard. How many of the Vice Chancellors today can do it? I think we have no... So what I would like to suggest, there is a need to do institutional re-engineering. I don't think it's a good idea to scrap the UGC completely, but there is a need to completely overhaul it, and this can be done by bringing in executive orders. For example, the most important thing, there is no power in the UGC. There are 20 plus fake universities in the country. And what can UGC do? Issue a fine of 1,000 rupees. What a mockery.
And advertisement
1,000 rupees for a fake university for issuing fake degrees. Yes, just imagine. So I think we need to revisit the entire functioning of UGC, giving it a strong leadership, change the style of functioning. I think we need to really do a large-scale institutional re-engineering. And that is, which will also include autonomy of the kind that has just been discussed.
I will come to the question that you asked about the quality of education.
Maintaining standards and quality.
This is one of the important mandates that is entrusted to the UGC. And I may mention that UGC was established way back in 1953, and after 30 years, National Assessment Accreditation Council was established in 1994. Now, in the last 20 years, only 1/3 of the universities and the colleges have been accredited, and of these, only again another quarter of them have been accredited in category A. So the quality of education has been very poor, and in this area, very little has been done. And the reasons are many. One, there are infrastructural constraints, and the state and the central government is responsible for providing the funds. But unfortunately, the teaching, the research, and the consulting services have been suffering. And it is in the knowledge of everyone that we know, and that is also reflected in the huge pass out of the unemployable graduates.
Absolutely.
That we know of it.
Nandita,
and therefore, very little effort has been done. And in this context, I may point it out, our President of India has been giving his own speeches to all the central vice chancellors every year. And he has been pointed out that 40 to 45% the university positions, the faculty positions are vacant. It is perpetually happening.
Absolutely.
So when
Nandita,
you don't have the infrastructure, the teaching staff, how can you improve the
maintaining
quality?
standards. How much of it is the responsibility of the teachers or the teachers' bodies also? Because every blame can't be put on the UGC, which, as Mr. Bhattacharya was pointing out, it's become more and more bureaucratic. How much does teachers' bodies take responsibility for the fallen standards?
No, well, we take full responsibility, and in fact, you would be happy to know that we have been struggling for many years to bring about genuine improvement in the teaching standards. All our elected representatives have, and we made various proposals which have been adopted in some cases. But what we find is that over the last several years, the kind of infrastructural constraints that are not being addressed. Student-teacher ratio has become phenomenally large ever since the OBC expansion took place. That is, the number of students was increased by 50%, but the corresponding number of teachers was not appointed. The corresponding infrastructure, rooms, space that was supposed to be provided did not come in, and a lot of the money that came in was thrown away through corrupt practices and also through, vice chancellors like ours who distributed laptops to popularize that 4-year program and so on. So there has been no attempt by the UGC to actually see that before you bring in a new course, as per its own act, you're supposed to look at the cost 6 months before that, see that the infrastructure is there, see that, whatever financial commitment has to be made is there. You cannot do without funding, and funding is being continuously reduced. Teachers are not appointed.
No, but Mr. Hasnaian feels that the funding is, there's no lack of funds.
But it's not being given to the universities.
It's not being given. Mr. Hasnaian, very quickly, we are running out of time. So you think that, the existing UGC can be reshaped, can be restructured instead of creating a new institution. Is that what you're trying to say?
I fully agree. We need a very major overhaul. Major surgery is required from top to bottom.
Okay. Professor Bhattacharya?
Yes. What we need is a regulatory body, but not a bureaucratic organization. It's a think tank and a facilitator of education.
Now, do we need to scrap the UGC and bring in a new organization?
Call whatever it is. Ultimately, it will be known as, see, Britain has UGC. Nobody complains against it.
National Higher Education Authority. That's
whatever
what is being
name
suggested.
you give, the idea is it has to facilitate educational institutions, ensure and provide them autonomy in education with adequate fund, but not allowing itself to interfere in the day-to-day affairs of the universities.
Urmi, you think the government is determined to go ahead with it?
I think the government is pretty determined to go ahead with it, and I think, barring for just politicking, I think it should have cross-party support. But the fact of the matter is, whether you call it UGC again or you call it National Higher Education Authority or what you call it, the fact is the UGC of today and whatever comes up tomorrow has to look radically different. And therefore, whether you scrap it or you restructure it, the two will have very little in common. The question that we should then ask is, can we entrust the same people who have run this setup and have failed to do so and have actually curtailed their own powers over a period of time, can we entrust them to actually do something better, or should we look beyond?
Okay. I think the last words to you, Mr. Ansari, very quickly.
Administrative restructuring and strengthening would be required, and the UGC need to be injected with a specialist, and also the political interferences should be minimized.
Okay, I think on that note we'll end, but obviously after this debate it's quite clear that there needs to be much more discussion on this report which has come out before any final decision is taken. Hopefully the government will consult all the stakeholders that Nandita was pointing out earlier, and we will see how it will all go about. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time tomorrow.